When you think about deaf education, it is easy to think of it like a building or a large classroom, a test, long hallways, aisles of books, a place where you're going to carve out your future. But when you get there, you realize you're not the only one.
When you go to deaf education, it's people meeting people, learning from each other and growing together.
It's working together to build something bigger than ourselves.
It's the relationship. It's a good conversation with good friends. It's expressing who we are by means of communicating.
It's hard work, but lots of fun.
So how did total communication began? Marahil marami sa atin ang nagtataka o nagtatanong kung kailan nga ba nagsimula ang total communication. So let's start. Sinasabi dito na total communication emerged in the 1960s as a response to historically disappointing results of oral-only programs in North American schools for the deaf. So even though their students is deaf, pinipilit nila yung oral-only programs para sa mga bata which is not suited for them. And it's because of that, several generations of deaf people grew up with a strong resentment toward pedagogical practices that force them to speak and to rely on lip reading. No? So paano sila makakapagsalita or how they can understand or how we can understand them kung their focus of education or the pedagogical practices is the oral communication. So nagkaroon dito ng matinding galit yung mga deaf students at of course the parents doon sa practices na yon. So deaf education as developed and administered by hearing professionals committed to oralism was experienced by many deaf students as a highly oppressive system. And the fact that oralist education had emerged only as a result of the vigorous suppression of the ASL-based system of deaf education that had rebuilt in the 19th century.
Between the extremes of oralism and deafculturalism, a promising light to incorporate and reconcile the best elements of the rebel through total communication. Total communication may have been a necessary way station on the road from oralism to bilingual education of deaf children in America. Total communication provides deaf children and their teachers with many communicative options as possible. Also, total communication approach, we can ensure that all forms of communication are valued. We can say ensure that gestures, body language, signs, symbols, photographs, objects of reference, and voice output communication aids are used in a consistent manner to support speech or as an alternative to speech. And this approach helps an individual to form connections, ensures successful interactions, and supports information, exchanges, and conversations. With that, people who are deaf and hard of hearing could be able to socialize and communicate more easier with other people. Total communication is a good help in promoting inclusivity and to lessen the barrier between people who are deaf and regular people. The importance of total communication, it is helps to motivate the person and offers a common sense strategy for dealing with communication failure. And the total communication learning model helps deaf children improve communication skills as a condition for establishing social interaction.
Why is it important to have an altered speaking and signing skills? They can demonstrate their understanding of their life and circumstances. They can further develop their communication skills, their thinking, and their ability to relate to others.
In particular, speech reading is the ability to become aware, learn to understand and associate facial expression, lip movements, and general body clues. This is why it is the building blocks of their communication that help a child with hearing loss develop their expressive and receptive language. The child watches the movement of the speaker's mouth and face. From there, they should understand what the speaker is saying. Sometimes when talking with a person who is deaf or hard of hearing, people sometimes exaggerated their mouth movement or talk loudly, and result from an exaggerated mouth movement and a loud voice. Speech reading is important because practitioners of total communication would want the student to talk in a normal way. But the method is only through looking directly at the mouth, speaking moderately, and making sure he or she watches you firmly.
So now, let's move on to the application of hearing aids. So what is a hearing aids? A hearing aid can help people hear more in both quiet and noisy situations. So as educators, we should encourage and expect deaf children to use whatever auditory capacity they have for them to feel comfortable at all times. So for implications of using hearing aids, we need to keep our students who are deaf in better contact with their surroundings so that they can feel and see the beauty in our nature. Through the use of hearing aids, it lets them listen to themselves, helps them to discriminate sounds or words and noises, if it is good to hear or not.
Voice and sign. Application. We should use speech and sign because it helps the deaf child discover some basic information about structure and form of language in a natural setting. If we use our voices, deaf children will try to use their voices, and their language is more likely to approximate correctly English. The use of certain words again and again and the shades of meaning, then they arrange it so that their signing is in the form of English syntax.
Skills in sign language. As educators, we should exhibit some level of competence in sign language. By modeling sign language to the child, this affects how the deaf child comes to see himself to increase motivation, to upgrade his sign language skills. What are the skills in sign language? Learn the finger spelling. Learn phrases that frequently used in sign language. Use proper facial expression with an appropriate signing face. Know your sign accurately. Proper location of the hand. And last, keep it fun and always remember why are you learning the sign language.
Manually coded English. It is also called manual communication. It refers to several types of messages produced by the hands, arms, face, and body and received by the eyes. Manual communication teaches children to communicate using sign language. But usually for those people who are blind and deaf-blind, na-acquire nila ang sign language by teaching them hand-on-hand. Developed in Australia in the early 1980s, signed English is a contrived system of signs that aims to represent spoken grammar. It is comprised of a vocabulary of borrowed, adapted, and made-up signs and finger spelling. It was used in compulsory education in an effort to improve the English literacy levels of children with significant early life deafness. In the current compulsory education system, it is now used less. Signing Sac English is a sign system that matches signs with the English language. It is one of the first manual English systems to be published in 1972 and has become extremely popular in schools. In recent years, researchers have begun testing children exposed consistently to SEE at home and at school.